This is election 2022 featuring New Mexico's gubernatorial race. Thanks for joining us. I'm Anthony Moreno. Today we feature a conversation with the incumbent Democratic candidate running for New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Governor, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us.
You're welcome. I'm delighted to be here, Anthony.
It's great to have you here to talk about the issues. One big issue is public safety in New Mexico. There's a lot of concern in not only this race, but other races across New Mexico about public safety in our state. If reelected, what steps will you take to improve public safety?
Well, we're going to make sure that we continue on the path that we've been on, and I want to make sure that folks are, really aware of what those steps have been and why they're critical. And of course, crime is now a national issue that's requiring, and it does deserve that attention, to really focus on what's gone wrong. So here's what went wrong. Number one, you have to invest in public safety. If you're not going to invest in officers and their training and their equipment, then you put yourself in a position that for any hardship, any issue, anything that changes, you don't have enough folks in growing communities, right, to keep us safe. Two, we have a number of firearms that are flooding our communities, our neighborhoods. We know that is a risk. We need states to really keep up with that. And so just in those two issues alone, in addition to making sure that dangerous repeat offenders need to stay in jail and in prison longer, we've done work on all three. So number one, $400 million. That's twice as much as my predecessor did in 8 years in 4 years. So that's smart policing. I know you want to ask a question.
Yeah, no, you brought up a couple of things that I think we should just talk about right now. And the first is gun violence. It's been a
but I talked about those investments. You don't have any investments. You can have all the gun violence issues you want.
Well, you
can't do anything. But wait, Anthony, what would you do about that if you have no officers?
I
so
hear what
317 officers, $72 million, $400 million training, vehicles, crime lab. If you can't trace a gun, you're not going to be able to do much about that. You got to have gunshot detection. And we're now paying officers more and recruiting them. Tougher penalties, but here's about gun violence. New Mexico, on just one issue, only joins 14 other states to require universal background checks. There you go.
Okay, thank you for informing us with that. But I want to talk about gun violence a little bit more because lawmakers took steps to address this, passing a red flag law here in the state. The Albuquerque Journal reported this year that in those 2 years since this law has been in effect, there's only been 9 petitions filed to remove firearms for folks who may be deemed dangerous to themselves or others. Do you think this law is effective?
I know it's effective. I think it might be that we need to do two things. Again, not having enough officers means that folks aren't, because that's who has to make the referral. It's a very narrow provision, and I believe that New Mexicans don't want that provision about who can actually make referrals. Needs to be parents, other students, educators, and not just about schools, but that's one of the high-risk environments. So that's one area. But you might have noticed that not just the Journal, but other folks have correctly identified that the requirement in New Mexico that in a domestic violence issue that's being adjudicated, that if we have one of those parties with a firearm, that firearm, right, is taken into basically police custody, right? You have to relinquish it until we know where we are and what's going to occur. That isn't happening around the state, and interestingly enough, it's not really happening around the country. And I think we may have politicized evidence-based strategies that keep guns out of the hands of people who should not have them. 80% of responsible gun owners, right, want that. They want that to be the case. And some other areas where I think New Mexico could do better is now in gun storage and other safety measures, and maybe increasing the age by which you can access particularly firearms that are more automatic.
Now, you've been vocal about revisiting bail reform in the state. Other lawmakers, prosecutors have voiced the need for it. What's your plan for this, and how do you think it could be used where it's not discriminating against folks who may be living in poverty?
Well, you're the first person interviewing me who's gotten to the other side of that issue, and I have to say I really appreciate that, because there are two sides to this. This is a state, along with many other states, that quite frankly was discriminating against individuals who were too poor to bail out. And remember, these can be innocent individuals, right? That's how our Constitution is based. There's a presumption of innocence. They're raising their families. Maybe it's the head of the household, single parent. So there's some issues. We wanted to make sure, and it usually falls on the folks who get held, or minority men and women, and it's not applied as equally, it appears, and that's a constitutional problem. That's why New Mexico changed that in our Constitution, that the presumption is you shouldn't be held, right? That's how it shifted. There's a presumption that no one arrested until trial should be arrested. Then judges have the discretion, using prosecutorial information, prior issues, right, prior arrests, convictions, to assess risk. In my view, given so many issues, assessments are only as effective as the conditions that they were built to try to apply to. Each case is unique and different, and I want to go to the federal system, which just reverses the presumption, which is if you're dangerous, so you use, right, a firearm, it's a homicide, you're a repeat violent offender, aggravated battery as an example. These are individuals where the presumption is you are too dangerous in the community pending a trial, and it's rebuttable. So if a public defender says that's not true, you know, it's not, this is, the person's innocent, this is what occurred, not a risk, then you can always have that individual not stay in jail pending trial. That's the federal system, and I've seen no evidence that that system doesn't provide clarity, right? The kind of substantive outcomes that keep communities safer, and that we know what those standards are. In a 60-day session with a year in between, and with additional information about what we're doing in public safety, I think it stands a better shot. But I want to tell you, it's a heavy lift for people who worry that it may reverse us back to a place of discrimination. I'm still going to call for it, and I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that we get it over the finish line.
Where does recidivism play in public safety in New Mexico? And do you think the state is investing enough in recidivism programs?
Well, to talk about recidivism, whether it's in a corrections environment or it's just sort of general issues, you better have mental health services and substance abuse services. So you have to start on that side, because way too high, those numbers in terms of people who commit crimes, have mental health issues, right? They're self-medicating, and it is a very dangerous environment, and it creates the kinds of risks that we see play out all over the country. You don't have any. This is a state, only state in America, where a former governor just canceled mental health. So start there, and then add to that that we have a bias in the United States, in my view, that we don't really need to do anything. If you're accountable and you've been arrested and you were convicted and you've done your time, it's on you to engage back right into the community, and it's too hard. There are things we've done, right? We've got adult literacy, Medicaid, adult education. We've gotten rid of the black box, which means for public work, once you've done everything that you're required to do to be back to be a citizen, you can work. You don't have to disclose a number of issues that you'd never get an interview, even though you are done with that part of your life. So New Mexico's done a lot, but we need to do more in housing, direct access to mental health services, and family supports. Because if you can't earn a living, what do you think the likelihood is that someone's back into a high-risk issue that would require, or not require, but the notion that you can make it without reoffending is low, and that plays out all across America. I think we can do more.
Okay. Now, you brought up mental health, so I like to talk about that. Of course, there's been a lot of reporting done about the 2013 Medicaid freeze by former Governor Susana Martinez's administration.
Bigger than just a freeze, because it had a chilling effect on private insurance as well. It just ended in the state.
And we've seen the impact on mental health services across the state and how that played a role.
Some of the strongest providers were right here in Las Cruces,
Yes.
in Doña Ana County. That's right.
Now, mental health still is a challenge for our state. The state's in a situation right now where next fiscal year's budget forecast is looking pretty good. If reelected.
Pretty good? Are you kidding me? It's one of the best returns on investment in the history of the state, Anthony. So I'm going to have to challenge you on that. Do you know how much money we have available?
Well,
I'm
sure you could tell me.
It's $4 billion, $2.5 billion recurring. So far, about $1.5 billion that's non-recurring. It's one of the best, right, opportunities showcasing how strong our economy is in the history of the state.
So with that influx of cash that's going to be available, if reelected, are you going to commit to establishing more state-run mental health and substance abuse facilities in the state?
So I don't know that they need to be state-run. I mean, what you want is access to both inpatient and outpatient services. And those services need to be either emergency, right, crisis centers, or they need to be short and long-term treatment. It depends on what that issue is. And to commit, we've already built a number of beds. Look at TRC, look at Hobbs, look at Clovis, look at the groundbreaking we just did in Albuquerque at UNM, look at the Gateway Center. We've done a lot of investing in bricks and mortar. We're about to spend $50 million that's already been allocated and appropriated in Valencia County. It's going to be an 8 to 10 bed hospital, largely behavioral health. We increased all of the Medicaid rates and have a very sound, which is not enough, telehealth system, and we're the only state in America that has eliminated copays for behavioral health, which is a huge access issues for folks in the long term, because you're going to need maybe a lifetime of counseling support and medication. And we have mandatory behavioral health like Kendra's law, so it's outpatient mandatory treatment for access to often prescription drugs. That's all done. Here's what's next, and we've raised all those Medicaid rates. We have to build new providers into our system, having clinics, facilities, the ability to provide those services. And we've been with opportunity scholarships. We're seeing an influx in allied healthcare professionals. I need counselors and LADAC professionals. I need addictionologists. If we're building, and we are, this infrastructure, I feel very confident that we'll see an influx in those providers.
One of the challenges that has been brought up by advocates in mental health and substance abuse is that getting people here, recruiting, retainment, establishing the next generation, which you brought up a little bit. How do we get there? What is your plan, if reelected, to get there to where we are recruiting quality care?
In 1 year, we got 1,000 nurses. We've brought more than 30 plus physicians to New Mexico in rural areas. That's tough. Loan forgiveness, investments through Medicaid. Medicare, it's a weird situation, right? So federally run healthcare system. Medicare decides how many residence trainings slots anybody can have across the country. They haven't increased it in a long, long time. So you can educate someone, get a degree in medical school, but getting you placed is tricky. There are not enough slots. So New Mexico now pays for those slots through Medicaid, which is a groundbreaking initiative. And I'll tell you what I think will be a game changer. Two things. We're going to propose to the legislature that we basically endow the University of New Mexico Medical School. By doing that, you've got 200 students, 200 doctors with let's say that 75% of those would be from New Mexico. They will stay here and practice here because now their medical school has been taken care of by New Mexicans. And I think that in and of itself is going to be a significant change. We also think that we can propose to the legislature sort of in a universal approach to underwriting malpractice. So you might hear, folks on the campaign trail talk about there's a one size that's created issues. New Mexico struggled, that's not true, for decades with having enough access to healthcare providers. It literally is a Medicare antiquated rule, but OBGYN in particular, no one around the country can maintain unless you're working for an HMO, and that's the number of enrollees you have. They tend to be in urban areas. Well, if we underwrite that in a nonprofit context, and we have experience doing that, we do it for high-risk patients in the state, I think you might see an influx of providers last. Given what's going on with the Dobbs decision and overturning Roe v. Wade, we're already being contacted by a number of OB/GYN and related primary care physicians who are worried about prosecution and interference with independent medical advice and treatment for their patients, and they're looking at states like New Mexico.
Now, still with that mental health issue, the pandemic impacted us in so many ways. There's been a lot of data out about just how our young ones were impacted. A lot of children across the country in New Mexico lost parents, loved ones, guardians. How do we address mental health for our most vulnerable?
Yeah, well, same issue, right? You're going to have to build a system that's not designed to do one set of the population. We talked a bit about corrections. We talked a bit about substance abuse. When I was the Secretary of Health in 2004, we had a couple of school-based health centers, and by the time I was doing something else 3 years later, there were 68, and they were incredibly robust. Shortly thereafter, all the behavioral health came out of those school-based health centers, and we went back to about 25. So we've been building those up, and I'm feeling even more confident about the ability to do comprehensive, behavioral health services inside schools. It also means you need social workers and counselors. So we've seen an increase in the number of social workers. We hired 80 at Children, Youth, and Families Department recently. We're now partnering with universities like this one, and specifically Highlands, who specializes in social work training. So it's a new recruitment program and training program specific to school-age populations and to CYFD, and it's working.
I want to move on to another issue, of course, climate change impacting us all. If reelected, what is your next step to take on climate change in our state?
I want you to make sure I get a chance to talk about what we have done, because we are an international leader on addressing the climate crisis and being really clear about protecting our air, land, and water. And so New Mexico has very robust methane rules, which basically means we're not going to pollute the air. That is one of the worst, greenhouse gases, and when that comes right off oil and gas, we don't let you flare anymore, and we don't let you emit methane and now ozone. So the federal government has taken New Mexico's rules, which were adopted in a bipartisan and coordinated strategic effort with oil and gas, so that we know that they're working. It's also brought jobs and more money to the state of New Mexico. So those are two huge areas, but we also have a climate change task force that's been highlighted around the country as one of the most robust. So we're capping, we're doing abandoned wells, we're doing healthy soil. This university is leading in the country and making sure that soil, which does carbon capture all by itself, is being engaged in a more productive and specific way. And we're also doing conservation, so that we're really clear about what that looks like for generations of New Mexicans. We've been investing in cleaning hundreds of millions of dollars in cleaning water, brand new infrastructure, dealing with problems in wastewater, dealing with some of our septic tank issues all around the state, and there's more. So that's our record to date. Where we're going is largely, we asked for a GEO bond to consider in the last session, a conservation fund, which is also an environmental climate crisis tackling effort. It's all of the above. Instead of a GEO bond question, I think we're likely to ask for a sizable investment in a set-aside fund, like our early childhood fund, which will invest in those efforts, including getting at our forests. I mean, the issue is it's hotter and drier, so we need better stewardship, and I'm sure you're aware the federal government has said we think they're liable for one of the worst fires in our history, but they've also said New Mexico stewardship programs, which we've launched, are some of the best in the country, and they're going to allow us to get back into our forests and make them healthier.
Facing those disasters that we faced, two of the largest wildfires in our state this year, what are some things that you took away from that experience and how it impacted New Mexico that you think may help us avoid this in the future? What are some things the state can do?
Well, a couple of things. I'd love to avoid every natural disaster, and I would love to avoid that it's not just an extreme drought here. This state and the West is undergoing aridification. So let's be earnest, because we've ignored, right, as a planet, and we've ignored as a country that the climate crisis is real. I mean, even in today's day and age, using science and evidence-based strategies. In fact, I'm in, right, an election contest with a candidate who doesn't believe in climate change, and that those attributions are largely, but not entirely, but largely fossil fuel, right? So we've decarbonized the utility sector. We've set those goals. We're investing in renewable energy. All of that makes a big difference, but we're going to have issue with fires. Right, that isn't going to change overnight. And with that fire, in June of this year, 31 counties were on fire. So what do? We make sure that the investments out of the Inflation Reduction Act, right, it's $350 billion, it's a ton of money that we're going to invest in the kinds of evidence-based strategies that allow us to maintain a productive, safe footprint until we actually reverse the catastrophic effects of climate change to date. That's what we're going to do.
Is our state's infrastructure prepared for the impacts of climate change? If elected, what are some things you want to address to make sure that it is?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that question. Are you talking about water pipeline infrastructure, since oil and gas
infrastructure in general,
right, not as heavy as water? You'd have to build a whole new water pipeline. It's 4 times. Are you talking about jobs and innovation in the future? Are you talking about investments in renewable energy? Tell me what you mean.
I'm talking about our
You talking about
infrastructure.
Decarbonizing transportation?
We live here in our part of the state. We've encountered flooding in a lot of parts, so in the southern part of Doña Ana County.
$123 million to this county to deal with flooding, and that's having an impact. That's part of the infrastructure investments that I was talking about with water and flooding. We're making sure every dam, dry or wet, is prepared for the future and is getting renovated. So instead of D's and F's, they're A's. I hope we don't have to have any B's. It's a really hard question to say, are you prepared? I think the better question, if I can be so bold, Anthony, is are you utilizing at your disposal, whether it's infrastructure investments, it's innovative jobs for the future, it's putting science into our schools in a way we're very clear about the things that we can all be doing, from recycling and conservation of water. Are we doing all of that? And as I said, New Mexico is identified as an international leader in that space. And if I'm reelected, voters should expect that we'll do a lot more.
I want to move on to education. A lot of issues in education. There's been some big concerns in recent years about keeping teachers in the classroom. The pandemic, of course, the impact that may have had on it. I'd like to hear from you. What is your plan to continue with the efforts you've already put in place to keep teachers in the classroom if reelected?
Let's talk about New Mexico State. Just released a pretty incredible study where they identified that we reduced teacher vacancies in this last year by 34%. It's one of the best efforts in the country, so I want to thank New Mexico State for putting out that independent information. So we do it by making sure that our current educators have loan forgiveness. Current educators, right, have access to affordable housing. Some cases, if it's a hard to teach, hard to serve area, free housing. We're making sure that they're the highest paid educators now in the region. We'd like to do more. We're also making sure to educate new educators. That's free. So college is now free for educators. We have a program that endowed that now with opportunity scholarships. This actual university put out that the highest enrollment they've ever seen, right, is all because of that opportunity scholarships. Pretty incredible. So that is already having an impact, but it might be a place for me when you have a significant problem and you're building to the future, and we are, and we're doing that successfully, which we're incredibly proud of. So smaller class sizes, deal with those vacancies, make sure that you're not at war with public education, have respect and dignity. If you want better outcomes, have more time in smaller classrooms with students. I will tell you the other significant issue that I think this state did better than any other state while we were building, that's educating and bringing educators back, which now in New Mexico you can come back to work and keep your retirement. That's incredible. We launched the best, right, public safety net for substitute teaching also in the country, and I myself was a substitute teacher.
That did make some news. Now, you mentioned the Opportunity Scholarship. There's a lot of excitement about the Opportunity Scholarship and folks having the opportunity to go back to school, finish their degree. What about the sustainability of it? Do you have concerns about the sustainability of the Opportunity Scholarship being able to be there for the folks who may be starting to go back to school in the future? Or do you have any concerns that they may be, that money may not be there?
No. The only concern I have is that if I am not the governor for the next 4 years, I have no doubt that that's not a priority for a different administration. I want a cradle-to-career, world-class education system. This is a state that is long bemoaned. We don't have, our students don't stay here. That we don't have a ready workforce, that we're not doing 2-year, 4-year trades, licenses, that we don't recognize that we have families that are struggling, that would like to go back to school later, right, in their family situation. Well, now we've solved all of that. If we want the kind of outcomes we're seeing in the economy, and they are in fact 4th best economy in the country, then we have to stay the course, and I believe in staying the course. I have no concerns. The outcomes will speak for themselves, and this is a state will benefit from those investments.
Only 30 seconds left, but you did bring up something, workforce challenges. There are concerns about working age population leaving the state. What are the things that we need to do in this next legislative session? If you're reelected, what are some things that you're going to focus on to address that issue?
Okay, well, kids are back in school. They're going to college. Older adults are going to colleges, more licenses, more businesses, more people staying here and moving here than ever before. Lowest unemployment in 14 years. I think those numbers and outcomes really speak for themselves. I don't think you need a legislative action except this. We're going to keep investing. We've seen enormous job growth right here. I think you have a film school. Students are very excited about that. We're seeing jobs in rural areas like Champerino, 300 jobs, cannabis, the innovation in high tech. What young people and a workforce challenges, what they really need is to know that they can build careers for themselves. Last thing about a workforce, the whole country is going to have to figure out a couple of key challenges: long-term care, caregiving, and ag. And we've made incredible investments to build opportunities for young farmers in New Mexico, and I'm beginning to see that it's paying off.
Okay, Governor, unfortunately we're out of time, but I do want to thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
And we want to thank you for joining us for this interview with the incumbent Democratic candidate for New Mexico Governor, Michelle Lujan Grisham. As we close this program, we do want to let you know that KRWG Public Media has reached out to the Republican candidate for governor, Mark Ronchetti, and Libertarian candidate, Karen Bedoni, for interviews to discuss their campaigns. I'm Anthony Moreno. Thanks for joining us. Early voting is underway in New Mexico, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th.